I think we are good to go. Good morning, everyone, and good evening. Good evening for Shay because he's joining from New Zealand. I'm sure it's 5 p.m. now. Thank you for taking time to attend today's webinar. And today we have Shay Shmeltzer. Shay is a director of product management for Oracle Cloud Development Tools. He's focused on helping developers simplify and streamline their work leveraging Oracle solutions. Shay is frequently presents at industry events, publishes many articles, and I request you to follow him in the Oracle blogs, blogs.oracle.com, and you can search for him by his name. And is also very active in Twitter. I think that's what we need to follow. Normally provides a lot of updates, and it's a JDAV Shay, and you can see bottom of the screen. Before handing over to Shay, I want to cover a few housekeeping things. So very important. I know this week is really a festival week. That's really impacted our attendees, but it's very important to share, tweet about this webinar. This is the only way you can connect with other attendees as well as with the speaker, and that way you can make more virtual connections. Use AIOG webinar hashtag so that you can search basing on that. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at Q&A bottom of your screen. Please ask your questions for speaker at any point of time. Type in Q&A only, right? And Shay will answer appropriately. Please prepare your questions properly before asking. Do not type your queries like a chat. Let us respect Shay's time. Please use a chat box for any support. We will help you from the chat box. I think this is very important, right? Remember, knowledge is power as long as it is shared. So do not share with you, share with others. And also, I'll share the speaker feedback, or if you want to ask any questions later, I'll share that once Shay completes his presentation. And today we are also running a poll question. Please respond to that to basically understand your background. With that, very warm welcome, Shay. Please go ahead and share your screen. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sai. Okay. Hey, everyone. I think we'll run the poll right now. And while the poll is running and you're answering, basically what I'm trying to figure out is which areas are more interesting to you. So feel free to just click and answer the technologies that you're currently using, and it might be multiple of those. So I'll know a little bit how to basically target my content today. First of all, I wanted to thank you all and for the All India Oracle User Group for the opportunity to present today. I think this session is relevant for anyone who's doing development in the Oracle ecosystem, and maybe even to people who are not using Oracle at all. And what we'll be talking about today is basically how to conduct an agile development process and how to automate DevOps using Oracle technologies while you're developing. And I can see we have like a variety of people who are using a variety of services, so that's great. Let's actually start with the session. So as mentioned, my name is Shay Shmeltzer. I'm Director of Product Management for the Oracle Cloud Development Tools. Basically, our group builds tools for developers that are used both inside Oracle by the Oracle development teams, as well as by customers to help them develop their applications, solutions, etc. You can find me on Twitter at jdevshay. If after the session, like maybe tomorrow, you suddenly remember a question that you didn't ask today, you can feel free to post it on Twitter and I'll try and answer there, or use our forums, of course, as well. That's another option. First thing we should probably do is just make sure that everyone is up to speed with the two things we're going to cover today, DevOps and Agile. I'll start with Agile. And what you have here is basically a copy of the definitions of those things from Wikipedia. So you know it's actually an accurate definition. Agile is all about delivering software. It's a methodology for delivering software that aims to deliver software in a more rapid way, with a more flexible way, and using kind of an early delivery and continual improvement approach. So when I started in the computer business, you would usually, if you were going over to do a development project, you would spend about a year interviewing all the people about what they need. Then you would do another year of design. Then you would do 2 years of development. And after 2 to like 4 years, you would actually deliver the software to the customer. The problem is that in today's world, things are changing so fast that if you would deliver something 4 years after you interviewed people, it's not going to match anything that they actually need at that point of time. And in addition, in those 4 years, people don't get anything that benefits them. So Agile is all about trying to take a different approach where we basically try to deliver things in an incremental way. So deliver something working that would benefit the customer as fast as possible, and slowly build additional features on top of it. And one of the key concepts here is to be able to get feedback from the customer about what is important to him, what is the most important thing to him next. And you as a developer or a development team would be able to adjust your priorities based on what the customer needs and realizing that things might change over time. Okay. So managing this development cycle, this is what Agile is all about, trying to establish a procedure and a methodology for being able to do this. Okay. DevOps is not the same as Agile. DevOps is, again, if you look at the definition, they start with the thing that it's a cultural movement and stuff like that. For me as a technical guy, it's more interesting the later part of the definition where it says that beyond being a culture, this is an environment where you can build, test, and release software in a rapid, frequent, and reliable way. And if you look at this definition, you can see that it aligns pretty nicely with what Agile aims to do about the rapid and the frequent delivery of software, and also about the concept of delivering this in a reliable way. And what DevOps tries to do is to automate as much as possible those various steps that are involved in delivering software. Okay. And one way to look at it is that if you don't have DevOps in place, if your development process is not automated, it's not streamlined, it's going to be very hard for you to actually deliver on the Agile approach. Okay. So we look at DevOps as something that enables you to do Agile development. Okay. So those are the two key concepts. What I'm going to talk about today, and beyond talking, I actually want to show you a demo, is about the service that we use inside Oracle, and again, that you can use as well as a customer to integrate those two concepts, Agile and DevOps, and implement them when you're developing in an Oracle Cloud environment. And this service is called Oracle Visual Builder Studio. By the way, up until 3 months ago, this was known as Oracle Developer Cloud Service. We renamed it, multiple reasons why we renamed it, but everything that was in Oracle Developer Cloud Service is still there with a bunch of new functionality as well. Okay, so if you go and you Google and you look up some blogs, you might find some blogs that are talking about Developer Cloud Service. They are still relevant to things you can do with Visual Builder Studio. You will find also a lot of information about Visual Builder Studio. And what Visual Builder Studio allows you to do is it gives you an integrated development platform for your team where you can do agile collaborative development. You can version control your software and infrastructure, and you can automate continuous delivery of your artifacts. Okay, so it basically aims to cover the full development cycle for your team in an integrated environment. Okay. So if you talk about DevOps, you usually look at something like the diagram on the right side, which is the DevOps cycle, where you start by planning what you're going to do, then you code your application, then you do the build step. Build step usually collects a bunch of libraries that you rely on and resolve all the dependencies, and then compile it and creates a deliverable. Then you test this, and if the tests are successful, you release it and you deploy it. Okay, and then once it's deployed, you give it to your customers. Your customers are playing with it. They give you feedback, and then you plan what you're going to do next. And then you code again, build, test, release, deploy, and then you continuously run in this cycle. Okay. What Visual Builder Studio aims to do is to give you tools for each one of those points in the cycle. Okay. And it revolves around managing two things. It's revolves around managing your team and the work that you're going to do, and around managing the code that you create. Okay. So when we talk about managing your team, we're talking about a system that does issue tracking. We're talking about agile dashboards that help you track your to-do list, your priorities, about tracking your development sprints, and about wiki where people can share information. When we're talking about managing your code, we're talking about providing Git repositories where you manage the versions, the branches of your code, about being able to do code reviews, and about automating with continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines those steps of build, test, release, and deploy. Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper into each one of those bullet points and talk about what you have there, and then in 5 slides, I'm going to show you how you actually use this. Okay. So the first thing that you get is the plan stage. So for the plan stage, we have an issue tracking system. So maybe when someone, for example, in your organization finds out something that needs to be done in the system, he writes it on some notepad somewhere or on some sticky that he puts on his monitor. Or maybe there's an Excel spreadsheet. Those are usually not reliable ways to track your to-do list. What we provide you is an issue tracking system that allows you to log all the issues, prioritize them, assign them to people, estimate how long they're going to take, track their progress, put in attachment related to them, have a discussion about them, basically a full issue tracking system that is available for you in the cloud. Then we have Agile dashboards. Dashboards, we use both Scrum and Kanban methodologies. Again, both of them are related to Agile, and they allow you to plan what you're going to do in your development process, okay? Which items from your backlog you're going to try and implement, and then we help you track your development sprint with a bunch of charts and visualization that helps you see the work that your team is doing and whether you're going to meet your goals, okay? There's a bunch of reports there, and then in parallel, there's a wiki where you can write anything you want. So you can load into there things like your best practices, design documents, summary of meetings, all the discussions you have about features and stuff like that. They can all go into wikis that you can share among your development team. Okay. So all of those things together help your team collaborate and properly plan and execute your development process. Okay. Then we have the code step. So the code step is where you actually go and you code stuff. And there you can go and code in any development tool you want, any environment. What we give you is we give you Git repositories for managing your code revisions. Okay, so Git, you probably are all familiar with it. That's the most popular version management solution out there today, used by somewhere between 70 and 80% of developers out there. What we give you are private Git repositories hosted in our cloud environment. So you don't need to spin up a Git instance. You can just post your code into your private Git repositories that we managed in our cloud. Those Git repositories are protected. Only you and your team members and anyone in your team member that you give access to would have access to those. You can also, by the way, have shared Git repositories among your organization. For example, if in your company you have some reusable code that is used among multiple projects, you can have those in shared Git repositories. There's also the aspect of being able to protect branches in those Git repositories. So only people who are allowed, for example, to check in code into our main line of code would be able to do this. Or if we're approaching release, you can kind of freeze one of the branches and only the development managers can approve code that goes in there. So those are protected environments where all your code can be loaded into. Next thing that we have is the ability to do online peer code review. And that's basically the ability for developers to collaborate on the code, share the code. One developer gives access to another developer to look at the code. They can review the code, give him comments. Maybe a senior developer can help a junior developer make sure that the code is better, and they can have a full discussion as part of a merge request of the code before it goes into your production code. Okay. So this is the coding step. The build step, what we did here is we basically looked at what are the popular build frameworks out there, and we allow you to execute them and automate execution of them inside an Oracle Cloud environment. Okay, so if you're doing Java development, you're probably using build frameworks like Maven or Gradle or Ant. Okay, and by the way, that's not just for Java. Like Maven can, for example, if you're using Oracle SOA suite, there's Maven tasks for that. There are even Maven tasks for working with a database. It's just build frameworks that are popular out there that you can execute as part of our CI/CD pipeline. If you're doing JavaScript development, we support NPM, so you can use NPM to manage your dependencies and execute your packaging steps. Okay. If you're doing JavaScript, you can use things like Grunt and Bower and Gulp. If you're into the Oracle environment, we can run SQL commands against your database as part of your build steps. So maybe part of packaging the application is also connecting to a database, creating a bunch of tables in there and populating them with data. Okay. We can execute SQL CL command lines. We have things for the Oracle stack specifically, like the Oracle SOA suite and JDeveloper, and even Oracle Forms are all installed on our build servers, so you can actually execute things that relate to those. We also support function-based development by implementing Project FN specific functionality that allows you to develop functions that will be deployed to the Oracle Functions service. And of course, you can run shell scripts to execute any shell steps that you want. Okay? And all of those can be automated and streamlined and orchestrated into multiple steps that are executed one after the other to build and deliver your application. We also, by the way, allow you to use things like Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform if you're aiming to deploy on the Oracle compute environment. Okay, so you can have Terraform scripts in your Git repository that go over and define your complete environment, your compute, network instances, spin those up, and then deploy Docker images into the Docker registry and use Kubernetes to cluster those and for execution. And all of this with the ability to connect to OCI and invoke also the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure command line interface. Okay. For testing, we have the ability to, again, part of your full automation pipeline, we can do UI testing using Selenium. We can test the backend using JUnit. We can have all sorts of other frameworks. Maybe you use Mocha. Maybe if you're doing PL/SQL development and you want unit testing for PL/SQL, there's something called PL/Unit. You can also use that as part of your build process. We also are able to do code auditing, so static code analysis using, for example, integration with SonarQube or Findbugs, such utilities. One very cool thing that we added in some of the recent versions is something called Dependency Vulnerability Analyzer. Okay, so I'll explain what it does. Most of our projects today, most of the things that people use rely on third-party libraries. You're building user interfaces, you're probably relying on jQuery. You're building a Java backend, maybe you're relying on Spring, maybe you're relying on something else there, maybe Struts, maybe, I don't know, something else, JSF, whatever. You're doing Node.js, again, you're using NPM to define a lot of dependencies on third-party libraries. And that's great. The only problem is that those libraries are developed by someone else, and from time to time, people find vulnerabilities in those places where there's security issues. And in a lot of cases, those issues get resolved by a new version of the library. Okay. The problem is that when you look at a lot of the projects out there that people are using and developing, they are relying on specific versions of the libraries and are not necessarily up to speed with the latest version of each library. And you can run into situations where, because you didn't upgrade your libraries, your project has security issues and vulnerabilities because of your dependencies on those third-party libraries. So what Visual Builder Studio is able to do is actually scan your project to see which libraries you're using, compare those libraries to databases of known vulnerabilities, like the National Vulnerability Database and others, and then report to you which issues you might have in your code, okay, because of those dependencies. We can even help you fix those issues by recommending which version of the library you should be picking up to fix the issue. So all of those are parts of the testing and making sure that your code is reliable and working that you can do with Visual Builder Studio. For release and deploy, you can basically take your code, generate the artifacts, and then pick them up and deploy them wherever you need to deploy them. Maybe you deploy Docker images into Kubernetes clusters. Maybe you take your code and put it on a WebLogic instance. Maybe you take your PL/SQL and you run it against the database and create instance in the database. A lot of options over there to deploy on the Oracle platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or even the SaaS applications. So all of those are parts of what Visual Builder Studio provides. I'll go back to this slide. And if you notice here, this is basically what we talked about and all the functionality. You can see that on the last functionality, I have a little star over there. And the reason is because everything that you see on this slide is actually available for you for free if you're an Oracle Cloud account. If you have an Oracle Cloud account, you can spin up an instance of Visual Builder Studio and enjoy everything on this slide for free, except the last thing, the continuous integration and continuous delivery. Those steps of actually taking your code, building and delivering it, those rely on having a compute instance and storage instance, because we are running a process there to build your application and to store the artifacts. So that's the only thing that you need to pay for. And it's a very minimal price. Again, you don't have to use that part. You can just do Agile planning and just Git repository and stuff like that, completely free. If you want to automate your delivery, the only charge that you're going to incur is for those compute and storage instances. Okay. So enough of slides. Let me actually show you a demo of what we can say is a day in the life of a development team that is working on a project. Okay. So I'm going to start. Actually, I forgot to do one step. Let me just pick up in my demo over here. I think it's this one, right? Let me see if it would open. No, it's not this one. Okay, maybe it's this one. Yeah. To do, I think it's this one. All right. Let me open a terminal. What I wanted to show you is my running application. So change the okay, you know what? We'll skip this one. That's fine. All right, we'll start by looking at Visual Builder Studio. And I'm going to play two people in this scenario. Okay. First person is called Jeff. This is the guy. He has a beard. And when he goes into Visual Builder Studio is a cloud-based service. So the way that you access it is you go to your browser, go to the URL, and you get into Visual Builder Studio. The first thing you're going to see is a list of all the projects that you're a member of. And you can see we have a lot of projects because I'm doing a lot of demos, and each project can have different set of members in there. And we're going to start with a project that deals with Helidon-based project. Okay, so Helidon, for those of you who might not be familiar, that's a microservice, open source microservice platform that Oracle is leading for developing microservices using the Java language. Okay. So when I go into this project, I can see all the team members that are working on this project. And the interesting thing here is the recent activity. And in recent activity, you can basically see everything that happened in your project over the last period. Okay. So you can see what happened yesterday, what happened on Thursday, what happened 2 weeks ago. As you scroll down, you'll get more of the history of the project. So you can think about it as this is the Facebook feed for your project, okay, or the Twitter feed. So unlike Facebook or Twitter, this is actually work related. Okay, so you get here the feed for only things that are relevant for what you're working on. So let's say Jeff is the project manager. He went in and he can see the last thing that happened here is that we ran our tests and they failed. Okay. So what he would want to do is he want to go into this run of the tests and see what happened. Okay. So he can go over, look at the test results. He can see, oh, we have a test that failed. He can actually click on the test that failed and see exactly what was the issue. Okay. So I'm going to use kind of simple scenario here. This is a project that just does hello world type of thing, but it would basically hopefully deliver the message about what is going on. So we can see that the test failed because we were expecting the message to be hello there world, but we only got hello world. Okay, so that's the big error that we need to resolve. Okay, but because this test fails, we can't actually ship our software. So what I'm going to do as a project manager is I'm going to ask the developer to fix it. Now, if I'm just going to send an email to the developer, he might ignore the email, right? So the right way to do it is to go into our issue tracking system, which is, again, the same environment. We have an issue tracking system. And over here, I can create a new issue for what we just encountered. So I can say, hello, test fails. Look at wiki for what needs to be there. And I can give a link to our wiki page, for example. I can then say, okay, is this a defect? Is it a new feature that we're working on? Is it just a task that someone needs to do? If I'm working with Agile methodology, I can define an epic and have sub-stories below it. Whatever format is easier for you. In our case, this is just a bug. So we'll say this is a defect. This is a high priority item for us. I can say which part of our project this is in, okay? And you can see, by the way, that when I pick up a component here, I have an owner that this is associated to, okay? So database is Abhinav, and this specifically is in Helidon, so this is Shay. So those lists are things that you can customize in your project. You can define which list of components do you have? Who is the owner for each area? What releases do you have here? All of those are things that you can configure for your own project. And the nice thing here is because I have a default owner for each item, I know that it's not going to fall between the chairs without anyone looking at it. Okay? Then I can say, okay, when is it due? This is due today. How long it's going to take, or if I'm using, again, Agile methodology, I can talk about story points. Story points are kind of like complexity indicators. It's a Fibonacci set of records or numbers that indicates complexity. So I'm going to say this is 5 points of complexities, and I created defect 241. Okay, and this is now becoming part of the list of our open issues and all the defects that we have in our system over here. Okay, let me do a refresh because I see I have a little display issue here. All right, next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to plan our development process over here. Okay, we'll start with our backlog. In the backlog, I can see all the open issues that we have for our team, including issue 241, which is high priority, it's red. And I'm going to start a new development sprint. So we're in November, we call it the November 1 sprint. We're going to try and solve, let's say, 12 points of complexities. And we'll start and we'll say, okay, what are we going to try and solve? We're going to try the high priority items first. I'm going to take those and shuttle them to the top. Okay, maybe we also want to try and resolve this security vulnerability issue, and maybe there's also a table that we need to update in the database. You can see that if I bring in too many items, I'm going to get a warning here telling me, hey, you're overreaching, like you were aiming to do 12 points for complexity, but you already picked up 15, okay? Like any good manager, I'm going to ignore those things and I'm going to overload my team. That's fine. And I'm going to say, okay, let's start the development sprint from today. By default, it's 2 weeks, but you can, of course, customize each development sprint that you're running. And we now have a development sprint running. I can look at my active sprint, and I can see the breakdown of the things that each team members needs to do. Okay, so Abhinav needs to do this, Jeff needs to do this. He already started on this task. Shay has those 2 issues. If I know that Shay is working on something, I can shuttle it, for example, to the right and change the position. So this helps me track the status of my project. There's a bunch of other reports that I can get here. I can get like our progress to completing in 2 weeks and getting to 0 results. I can look at my history of items and how did I do in previous sprints and stuff like that. A bunch of things for your development managers to help you track your progress in your development. Okay. So this was from the perspective of the project manager. I'm going to switch now to look at it from the perspective of the developer. So Shay is the developer. He works on the same project, so he can go over and open the same project over here. And in his recent activities, he can see that defect 241 was created. Okay. By the way, we also work with email in the backend. So Shay would actually get an email telling him, hey, an issue was assigned to you. Issue 241 with the details, he can click on it and get to it directly. Shay can also do searches on stuff. You can define your own searches. For example, Shay defined his own little query here to look at all the open issues that are assigned to him, okay, including issue 241. So this is a new issue. He goes in, he can read what was written to him. He can, for example, add some attachment over here, maybe some designs or stuff like that. He can also give comments, for example, working on this today. Okay, so I added a comment. Okay, and when he does this type of thing, if Jeff goes back to his project home and he would look at his activity stream, he would see that Shay is working on this issue today. Okay, so again, it's all about being collaborative in your team and having an insight into what's happening in our project. All right, so let's start working on the code. The code is inside the Git repository. Okay, so over here, again, same interface inside Visual Builder, I can actually access my Git repository with all the code in here. I can clone this. Okay, I can basically take this and I get a URL, I can copy it, I can open whatever development environment I'm interested in working in. If you're working, for example, in Visual Studio Code, you can basically say, okay, go over and clone this code into, let's say, our download directory. Okay, and this would actually take your code from the cloud, give you a local copy that you can start to work on. Okay, and you should probably do branches and stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to do a shortcut over here. Is I'm going to actually change the code directly in the web interface. Now, one point is that you're not supposed to change code on your master branch. Rather, what you should be doing is you should be creating your own branch. So we're going to create a branch 241 because we're trying to solve issue 241. So now I have my own branch of the code, and I can go over and look at all the files in my branch. So this is my own little copy. I know that the issue is with the hello message. So I'm going to search over my files to find out where is hello mentioned. Okay, so I can see there's like tests that are looking for hello the world. And this is the actual file where we have the issue. So I'm going to go into this file and I'm going to fix the error here. Instead of hello, it should be hello there. Okay, so this is my code change. And I'm going to say fix for issue 241 changed message. Okay, so I did a change in my branch of the code. I can now go over, test it, do stuff like that. Once I'm happy with the code, I'm going to issue a merge request. Okay, so a merge request is basically me asking the team to accept my changes into their master branch. So the changes I did in my branch, I want to put them into the master branch. Okay, in order to do this, I need to have someone review my code. So I'm going to ask Jeff to review my code. I'm going to add myself as a reviewer. I can say, look, this is related to issue 241. Okay, And I can also, for example, do some comments over here. Changed to hello there. Okay, and create a merge request. Again, this would send an email notification to Jeff. Jeff would get an email notification telling him, hey, you have a request to review some code changes from your team member. He would go into his merge request view, click on it, and over here you can see what I wrote for him, right? You can see the messages I wrote for him. He can actually go and look at the file and see the exact change that was done, okay? And then he can give me comments on the code. He can say, for example, looks great, okay? And when he gives me a comment, okay, this is Jeff did this, I can switch over to being Shay. If Shay does a refresh, or again, he would get an email about it, he would see the comments that Jeff gave him. So we can have this iterative approach of reviewing the code, improving it, making sure everything is fine. Once everyone is happy, we click approve. So Shay is approving this. Okay, you can see Shay is approving. We'll also approve it from Jeff's side of point, and then we'll do a merge. Okay, and we'll take this and actually delete the branch and merge it into our main line of code, into the master branch. Okay, so now if we go into our Git repository, into our master branch, we should be able to see the code changes over here. Now, as a result of this, you're going to see that we now started a build that does the tests again. Okay, and this happened automatically once I checked code into the Git repository. Let's see why. While this is executing, I'm going to show you the configuration of the build job. So the build job is hooked up to our Git repository and is automatically invoked each time that someone checks code into our master branch. Okay. And once they check the code in, we're going to go in and use a Maven step to run the tests that are associated with our code. Okay. So this is what's happening right now. We're actually running the test. Now, in the build steps here, you can use end steps. You can do Gradle steps, Maven steps. You can write a Unix shell, right? So if you wanted to do an end script, you basically just say, okay, which end file I want to use, which targets in the end, and I'll do that. If you use Gradle, same thing. You can do Docker commands. You can, for example, publish or push an image somewhere. You can do project fn command. You can do SQL command. Okay, maybe you need to connect to a database. Okay, you give us username, password, connection, string. Okay, if you're using autonomous transaction database, you can give us the wallet and we'll connect to that. And then you can run a SQL file from your Git repository, or even just do some inline SQL. Maybe you need to clear the tables or populate the tables or whatever you want here. Okay. So you just add steps over here, just any step that you want. By the way, one of the steps that we're doing here before the build, it's actually not invoked right now, is we can actually do the dependency vulnerability analyzer to actually check our security issue. And then we can say, okay, if we have a security issue, fail the build, or create an issue in our repository and assign it to the Helidon area. Okay. So we can do those type of things here as well. Okay. Click save. And we can see, okay, 2 minutes ago, this job finished and it finished successfully. Green over here. Let's see for a second what's happening next. Okay. Okay, we can actually see that not only did the test job run, we also ran a publish job and a Docker Hub job, and then we created a jar and we deployed it. All of this ran 2 minutes ago because they are all part of a pipeline that we defined. Okay, I'm going to run the test again. Okay, while I'll show you the other thing. So I'm going to run the test one more time. Okay, and when you start the test, it's going to then run the other steps after that. Okay. Now, in the pipeline, we saw that we ran, for example, the job that publish our Helidon function to a Docker repository. So let's look at this job connected to the same Git repository. And the steps that we're doing here is we're logging in into the Oracle Docker repository, and we're building our image, and then we're pushing it into that directory. So this is one of the jobs that we ran after the test run. The second job was doing Docker Hub publication. So we're using standards here. So for example, when we're working with Docker, we're using standard Docker commands. So we can also publish to Docker Hub, for example. And we saw actually 2 minutes ago, we did this job that ran successfully and published. So I can actually go over here to the Docker Hub repository or my Docker Hub account. Okay, I'm gonna sign in. Okay. And you can see that 3 minutes ago, this image got pushed into our Docker repository. And that's what our build over here did. After we ran the test, took it and published it to Docker Hub. And then it got over, created a jar file, okay, stored it in our Maven repository, and then deployed it to Oracle Compute Infrastructure, for example. So we ran all of this pipeline 4 minutes ago, one step after the other. It all got automated for us and deployed the successful implementation over there. So as a result, the test over here was successful. So we can look at the test results over here. We can see our test this time passed. Okay, everything was perfectly fine. What we expected is what we got over here. Okay. You can see that the test right now takes a little bit longer than before, and that's because right now, not only are we testing the code that it returns hello world, we're also checking for vulnerabilities in there. So this is why the test is taking a little bit longer. You can actually go and look at the log over here as the test and the evaluation happens over here. So you can see the whole process of getting the code, going over, analyzing all the dependencies, and then checking them against those databases of known vulnerabilities and reporting any vulnerability that we would find here. Okay. So this was an example of the process that we're taking here. And the nice thing is that we can go back to our homepage and we can see the whole process that we took today in one central place. Okay. It started actually yesterday when a test failed. Jeff then went over and reported an issue in our system against this failed test and assigned it to Shay. Shay then took the code, created a branch, went over, did code changes, committed the changes into the branch, put in a request to do a merge. Okay. Jeff reviewed the code, gave him some comments, and then approved the actual merge. This then fired up the test. The test was successful, so we did a deployment to Docker Hub, deployment to the Oracle registry, creating a jar and deploying it to an OCI instance. So all of the process is documented in one place. If we go to our board right now to track the execution of our project, we can see the item is marked as resolved, it's completed, and Shay is now free to go and work on his next item over here. Okay. So what you saw here is basically the full development process. And again, in this case, we worked on a project where the Git over here, what we had here is a bunch of Java code. So you can go over here and you can actually see the Java classes that we modified and worked with. But again, this is not just for Java files. This can be for multiple other types of project. I wanted to show you one more project. Let me just see. I want to show a few other things. So let me just see, the test is still running, so let it run. We'll switch to another project. And let me show you my little COVID project. And this project is a project that is developed using Visual Builder for developing user interfaces. And we actually have here a deployment. You can see the last thing that happened is we did a deploy into an environment over here, okay? And I can also look at the whole environment and see all the deployments over here and see, for example, the deployed application over here. Okay. So if I go over and open up the deployed application, okay, we have a little system that actually tracks data about COVID live over here. So I can put in the name of a country, get the information about this country, I can switch to another country, let's say Let's say if I want to know what's happening in China, I can get the data about China. I can also get global information about all the cases around the world. US is right now leading. And there's also this area over here, the other tabs that I still haven't built. Okay, so maybe I want to show you how to build this. So again, just like with the Java example, my code is inside the Git repository over here. Okay, so all my HTML is available inside here under my web application. If I go into my others area, I can show you the HTML for my page, okay, which right now doesn't have anything beyond this title saying cases, which is what we saw here. Okay. Now, one of the nice things about Visual Builder is that I can actually, I want to do it not from as Jeff, I want to do it as Shay as the developer. So let me switch to the COVID app over here. And again, we looked at the Git repository. One of the nice things I can do in Visual Builder Studio is I can actually work on Visual Builder application, work on the code, not just at the source level. I can actually work with a visual editor. Okay, so this is one of the things that Visual Builder does. It allows me to visually build applications. Okay, so I'm going to open the code repository and my branch right now. This is the branch that I'm working on inside my IDE. Okay, and you can see this is the cases thing here. I'm going to change the title. I'm going to call it cases so far, for example. Okay, I can change it here, can make it a little bit smaller. And then I can add things to my page. So for example, let's add a cloud tag or a tag cloud over here to my page, make it a little bigger. And let's hook it up to data coming from our REST service about the current status. We want to know for each location, how many confirmed cases are in there, okay? And we use the location as the key here. So this is the code changes that I'm doing. Now again, I'm doing everything visually, dragging and dropping. I can then set properties. I can say, okay, I actually want to see it as a cloud way, okay, like this way. What I'm doing here visually is actually done in code, right? So I just added a bunch of code here to my page and change some code. Now that I'm done, I can actually go over here, push it into my Git repository. Okay, added cloud tag or tag cloud, never mind. Commit the changes into the Git repository and then create again a merge request from here to say, okay, I want to change the things here. Okay, added tag cloud. And I can add Shay as a reviewer. Okay? And just like before, if I had issues that I'm tracking, I can also use this for issues. Click close, go back to my project. In my project goes into my merge request, look at my code changes, see the exact changes and the files that were changed, the HTML changes, the changes in the JSON file, and then say, okay, you know what, I'm approving those changes and push them into my master branch, which would then fire up a build job. And the build job is part of a pipeline that takes my application, package it, creates zip files, and then deploys it. And if you look at this build job that is right now executing and the configuration here, same thing, we're connecting to the Git repository. And then in the steps here, we're doing a specific step for visual application of taking it and generating zip files. And after that, we're going to keep our zip files in our repository. The next step after this is going to pick up the zip files with our deploy job. Okay, so if we look at the deploy job configuration, it's going to pick up the zip files over here, copy them, and then deploy them to Visual Builder instance in the cloud. Okay, so let's see where we are right now. We can see that this is still running, the COVID package over here. Okay, this finished successfully. Now it's doing the deployment, and you can, again, you have live reporting on each steps as it's happening over here. And you can see this whole process is automatic. So let's see, how is it doing? Over here, still executing, almost done. can actually go over to this build job. You can see it happening here. Again, you can see the deployment happening live here. The log is being tracked over here. And we'll give it 1 more minute to see the deployment complete. But again, the idea here is to show you the same process using a different technology. This time we're doing HTML, JavaScript-based development using Visual Builder, but the whole management is done inside Visual Builder Studio. Okay, we're almost done, right? Yeah, there we go, done. Let's go back to the project that we were looking into. This one, we'll hit the refresh button. All right, we got the new title and we got the deployed tag cloud, shows us our current COVID situation around the world. And again, what you see here is the speed in which I can take and do code changes, manage them, version them, okay, approve them, and how I automate the deployment, maybe to our QA instance, maybe all the way to our production instance. All right, let's summarize what we saw today. The tool again is called Visual Builder Studio. It's a cloud service. It gives you an integrated platform to do DevOps and Agile in one environment. You can use, by the way, I showed you the whole thing end to end, but you can choose to use just parts of it. Maybe you just need a Git repository. Hey, you get a Git repository for free. Maybe you already have a Git repository. We can map to an external Git repository and pull the code from there and do the build automation and the deployment on our platform. Maybe you just need an agile tracking, issue tracking system. We can do that for you. Okay. The nice thing again is this is mostly free. If you have an Oracle Cloud account, you can go over and spin up an instance of Visual Builder Studio and get Git, Agile, Wiki, code review, all of this for free. Okay. And if you want to, you can also do the continuous integration and deployment. So this is a foundation service inside the Oracle Cloud, works for multiple types of artifacts. If you would Google up things like managing database, Oracle DevOps, Visual Builder Studio, you would see a video and a couple of blogs that shows you how to do that and manage the lifecycle of your database objects, stuff like that. All right, let me see if we have any questions in our Q&A area, and I'll try and answer them. Hopefully this has been useful. Again, what we would love you to do is actually try it out today. Go over, spin up an instance, and try the functionality that you're seeing here. There's a question here if we can version control PL SQL. Yes, you can definitely do that. You can version control directly SQL files. We actually recommend using version management frameworks around database, things like Liquid-based or Flyaway, and there are blogs that show you how to do that. So again, if you actually Google my name along with DevOps Oracle database, you would find a couple of videos and blogs that show you how to do that. Can we build mobile applications? Yes, if you actually use a Visual Builder, the development tool to build your mobile application, we actually automate the creation of the applications, including generating the IPA and APK files that you take over and deploy to the Oracle, sorry, not to the Oracle, to the app stores, iTunes or Google App Stores. What happens to developer cloud service? It stays there. Basically, it just changed the banner. If you already have developer cloud service, you came in on Monday about 3 months ago, and you went into the instance and the title just say Visual Builder Studio. You came in last week and we improved the UI, but all the functionality that was in there is still there, and you can use it just like before with a lot more functionality in there now. There's questions here about DevOps for EBS, the Oracle Business Suite. You can also do that. Again, we have capabilities to take Java artifacts and deploy them. We have capabilities to even take Oracle Forms artifacts and deploy those, and of course, PL SQL. So you can also automate aspects of the Oracle Business Suite with Visual Builder Studio. Is this the same as Visual Builder Cloud Service? No, it's not exactly the same. This is actually something we call Visual Builder Studio. It's a separate service. Again, it's a free one. It incorporates the design time that you see in Visual Builder. So you saw the same type of design time, but it's much more comprehensive in terms of the capabilities. You saw like the Git integration, the whole continuous integration automation, and it can deploy at the end to your Visual Builder instance or your Oracle Integration Cloud instance. So it's definitely useful for Visual Builder application. We highly recommend that you look into that for those use cases, but it's also independent of that. The name is the same, but again, you don't have to use Visual Builder to use Visual Builder Studio. You can use anything else that you want. Right, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, if
Costing,
not,
again, costing, this is free if you have an Oracle Cloud account, okay? If you have a Universal Credit Cloud account or a government cloud account, you can spin up Visual Builder Studio for free. The only thing that you would need to pay for is if you want to do continuous integration part, the build and deploy part, you would need to have compute instance and a storage instance. And the price there is the price of Oracle Compute and Storage, which are really cheap. Handling reports for e-business suite. We don't have reports builder, but you can store the reports files inside the Git repository if you want to. Right. So we're approaching our 1 hour time slot. Hopefully this has been useful for you. If you have further questions, feel free to PM me or DM me on my Twitter account, jdevshay. We also have a discussion forum for Visual Builder Studio that you can join in. Our documentation page has a bunch of tutorials to get you started. And if you look us up on YouTube, on the blogs, we have a lot of tutorials and how-tos that show you how to use Visual Builder Studio for a lot of type of artifacts. Hopefully this has been useful for you. Thanks everyone for attending today, and hope to see you as one of our customers very soon. Thanks, have a good day.
hey, thank you very much, Shay. I think it's really on-time presentation. Thank you for that. Um, I think, guys, I think this is like, if you are new to a visual builder, I think it's a really great tool. Even myself presented a lot of sessions on this, and you can start using it. As Shai mentioned, it's a free if you have an Oracle Cloud account, right? So it's very important to connect. Shai is very, very active in Twitter, so you can see Jadao Shai. You can connect with him, or maybe you can do, if you want to say thanks to him, you can do it on a Twitter. Also, you can ask any questions, further questions in the speaker feedback, or you can just provide a speaker feedback. Very important. Please spend at least 1 minute to provide a speaker feedback. And if you have any questions, and you can send it to webinar@aiog.org. So what is happening next week? Next week, we are focusing on your career. So please attend. First time we are doing this with one of the famous speaker from the Java community. 3 ways to grow your IT career to the next level. I think it's very important in now COVID world. So please attend the next one. Also, important thing is our Sangam is coming, right? So one of the first step you need to do is, if you are not in our website, please register and spread the word, right? And it is a free conference. We are working hard, getting new colors, new speakers, and new content. We are really working hard to get, absolutely. I think there are many webinars, many Oracle sessions are happening, but we have really picked the new topics and new speakers, right? So please mark your calendars. It's happening on December, 3 weeks starting from Thursday to Sunday, 2 weeks from your employer, sorry, 2 days from your employer, and 2 days from your personal time, right? So please attend Sangam. So with that, happy Diwali. This week is Shy, very festival in India, so that's why you see a little low attendance from India. But anyway, thanks. Happy Diwali, and have a wonderful rest of your day. With that, we are closing this session. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.